Hello, my name is Donnie Childs, and I'd like to welcome you back to our second edition of Hinwarujewi To, Let's Eat. Today I'd like to introduce to you one of our fine Otoe-Missouria cooks, and my favorite, my Hinu Marie Childs.
Hello, this is Marie Childs, and today I'm going to be preparing for you a steam fry. Everybody makes it different, and this is my version of how I make it. Several years ago, I started cooking steam fry in a roaster at big dinners and funerals, but I also developed a way to cook it at home in a crock pot. First off, today I really like to use chuck roast, but chuck roast is a little fatty, but the fat in the meat is what breaks down the muscle and helps to develop a more tender meat. Today I'm using rump roast. It's not as fattening and it has a good flavor also. So first thing we're going to do is start to cut our meat. And you want to cut the meat in a uniform fashion so that all the pieces are the same size and they cook the same. You know, years ago I watched my aunts cook, but I never remember anybody cooking steam fry outside. And I'm sure that it's difficult to cook steam fry outside over an open fire. You have to watch it a little more than usual, and you also have to make sure it doesn't burn, because it can burn real easy over an open fire. That's why I like to use the crock pot or roaster. When I'm cooking my steam fry, I put the roaster or the crock pot on high and I let it cook for approximately 6 to 8 hours. You add nothing to the steam fry but salt and pepper. You have to let it cook, and that helps bring the moisture. You don't add any water to it, so it makes its own gravy or sauce, whatever. And different people like to eat steam fry in different ways. Like, you might cook it with a gravy, and you can do that by adding flour and water to a paste and adding it to your steam fry. And you can also use cornstarch, and cornstarch is what I prefer. But today I'm not going to add any thickening. We're going to eat it just with the juice alone. Usually when I make steam fry at home, I use about 5 pounds of roast. And when I cook it in a roaster for a large group of people, I use 35 pounds of meat. You also want to make sure you have a sharp knife. I left a little bit of fat over here. If that was my husband, he would say, put it in there. You could make this for the evening meal, or you could let it cook all night and eat it for the noon meal. And after it's done cooking, you can turn it on low or warm just to keep it where it's ready to be eaten. Okay, now that our meat's cut, I'm going to add salt and pepper. And ordinarily you add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt for every pound of meat that you use. And that was about 2 pounds of meat that I put in there just now. But like I said, you can use a 5-pound roast and it will season it well. And pepper, I only use about a tablespoon, because I like a lot of pepper in my steam fry. I think it helps give a good flavor. Pepper doesn't have any calories in it, so it doesn't hurt you to season your food. Sometimes at home I will even add garlic to it, kind of like a roast. Salt, though, has a lot of sodium, so you don't want to overdo the salt. When I cook, I like to season it, and then when it goes on the table, it's already seasoned. You don't have to add any more salt or pepper to it. We'll put the lid on the crock pot and set it over here so that it can start the cooking process. Starting on the second dish of the day, and this is squash. Our Native American people ate a lot of squash, beans, corn, different things, and it helped us in our nutritional value for food. Squash doesn't have as many calories as does other foods. In fact, I think there's only about 80 calories in a cup of squash, but I'm going to fatten it up a little bit today with some butter and some seasoning. First, we're going to slice the squash, like I said, in a uniform manner. If you do that, everything pretty much cooks the same. If you have pieces that are too big or too little, then they won't cook the same as others. And I might also say that you don't want to cook this squash till it's just limp. You want to leave a little bit of crispiness to it, because then you have a little better nutritional value coming out of it. I'm going to use zucchini squash and yellow squash. I've washed this squash before I started, and right now I'm going to trim off some of the areas that are kind of rough on this and dark. It's still good, and a lot of people raise squash at home in their gardens. You mix the two squashes together. Today I've got 3 zucchini squash that I'm cooking, and 2 of the summer squash. And why I don't have 3 is because the summer squash was a lot bigger. So you can break down your ratio as to how you feel is good. My son, Donnie, likes to cook a lot, and he kind of made this dish for us at a family dinner we had a while back, and it was so good that I have made it, and I've put my own touch to it. I've added things, I've taken things away, and I guarantee you, once you start eating it, it will taste so good. With the meal I'm preparing today, the steam fry, the squash, and I'm also going to make another dish. I feel like these kind of go well together because you have your protein, you have your starches, and you have your vegetables. And they balance out each other. There's not a lot of time that this needs to cook. I cook it at 350 degrees in the oven. So always preheat your oven so that when you put it in, it's ready to go. And again, on this dish, you don't add any water. The only moisture is from the squash, and squash makes a lot of moisture on its own. And then I add butter, which is the fat in this dish. When you're fixing it, the ratio turns out really good, and everybody knows butter has a lot better flavor than a lot of other imitation margarines and things like that. And at home, that's all Hank and I cook with is real butter or toast or whatever. I'm going to season this with 7 herbs. It has onions, it has tomatoes, it has bell peppers, and you can season it however you like. A lot of people just like plain old salt and pepper. Then you put a little bit of salt, some pepper. Okay, after you've got all this on here and you've seasoned it, you want to mix it up, get that seasoning spread uniformly. And then I'm going to put it on this pan right here and spread it out. Now, I mentioned earlier that when Donnie made this, he added tomatoes to it. And the tomatoes just added a flavor and also added onions, but the seasoning I used today had those flavors in it, so we won't have to add anything else to this. After we've put this in the oven, again at 350 degrees, we let it cook for about, it doesn't take squash very long, so about 30 minutes, and then we take it out and we add Parmesan cheese to it. And just sprinkle the Parmesan cheese. I like to season my food very well because I like it to taste good. My sister Charmaine says she just likes to cook things simple, salt and pepper. So this is ready to go in the oven. Okay, as you can see, I did line this cookie sheet with aluminum foil, and I did that only to help the cleanup, and it makes it a lot easier to clean up a pan if you can just take the aluminum foil out and throw it away. This squash is ready to eat, and it smells delicious. Okay, the next dish we're going to cook is corn and hominy, and this dish was developed by my niece, Charity Norman. She made this at one of our family dinners, and it is delicious. And we brought it over here for a meal during one of Donnie's benefits, and people loved it. And so people have been requesting the recipe for it. The recipe for it is very simple. All the foods I've cooked today are simple and easy to fix. So what you want to do is you want to fix your hominy and corn to a 1-on-1 ratio. And I don't have the same size can of corn as I do hominy, so I'm using a larger can of corn and 2 cans of hominy. And you want to drain these. And then all you do is add butter again and salt and pepper to taste. And this dish really is better with a little more pepper again. I like to season my food well, and I encourage everybody to taste their food before they season it, because sometimes you're putting more salt on there, more pepper on there, and you don't really need it. Okay, now that all of our dishes are complete, I'm going to show you what a serving size is, and I'm also going to be showing you how it's plated on the table. Okay, first off we have the Steamfry, and now this is flavored just like, and I'm going to use this dipper, which is about an 8-ounce serving, but I've left a little space, so we're going to only do a 6-ounce serving. And as you can see, the juice is running off of that. And then I'm going to give you some corn, and this corn and hominy is probably the worst for our native people because there's so many carbs in it, and as a diabetic you don't want to eat too much, so I've got a small spoonful here. I'm going to put it right there. And then the squash has the least amount of calories, so you can have a little bit bigger serving, which I think about a cup is a good serving. Now that we've got the plate of food, I want to tell you the calorie contents of what I have fixed here today. The beef, for every ounce of beef that you put on the plate, it's 60 calories. There's only 0.2 carbs in it, but the fat content is 153. So that's where that comes from. I researched some of this before we came over here, and I was counting on a chuck roast. And this rump roast has a lot less fat, so it would be a little less in this plate today. And then proteins in the meat, which Native American diabetics need a lot of, is protein, and there's 110 grams of protein in that meat. The squash has about 80 calories into a cup serving. And then you also have the fat from the butter. And a stick of butter, which is what I put on here, has about 800 calories. But when you break that down into servings, this probably would amount to about 10 servings of squash. So you would break that down. And then the carbs in the squash is only 18 grams of carbs. And that's probably from the seasoning that I put on it. Then the corn is 165 calories, and the same with the hominy. And as most people know, hominy and corn are from the same plant. They have the same amount of calories. They're just processed a little different. I can remember as a young girl being down at my Grandma Susie's house, and she would slice this corn off the cob, and then she would put, I think it was some kind of like lye, she would sprinkle over it and hang it out over a white sheet so that it was dry in the air and it didn't mold, because there you got the airflow going through there. And then as it dried, you could store it and put it in like your pantry, or back then they probably put it in something to keep it from getting bugs or anything else in it. So this is your plate of food for today, and I hope when you taste it, you really enjoy it. Thank you for being here with us today, and now I think we're ready to Waduji. And my name again is Marie Childs.
Once again, we'd like to say thank you for joining us in our second edition of Hinwarujewi To, Let's Eat. We offer all Otoe-Missouria cooks to send in their recipes or ideas for our upcoming shows. You can do that by contacting me, Donnie Childs, at 580-723-4466, extension 152, or at dchilds@omtribe.org. And again, thank you and have a great day.